Okay, I'd like to welcome everybody to our next installment of the BKF web training. This web training again. My name is Matt Sparks with CAD Masters, and we'll be talking about today, starting with alignments, profiles, assemblies, and corridors. Now we won't have enough time today to finish off all those topics, so we'll continue on with the next one, the next session. But we'll talk about everything we can about alignments and profiles and profile views, assemblies, etc. So what we're going to do today is try to get started with basically designing these couple of roads and show you how to deal with the alignments, profiles, what other options we have for that, for labeling, etc. with these guys. So we're going to start off the thing with, we have a design here. This is just an X reference, just a two-dimensional layout. And then we already have a surface. If you notice, if I hover over it, there is an existing ground surface. So with the point here, we have kind of a preliminary design. How do I create alignments, the different options, whether it be an offset alignment, a widening, intersections, that kind of thing. How do we deal with alignments? Okay, so we're basically going to be looking at the drawing from a standpoint of this is a template that is just out of the box. So I know you guys do have templates, etc. So bear with me on some of the styles; they might be a little bit lacking. But so first things first is the alignment is the 2D layout that we have to basically going to convert those polylines that are from the X reference to an alignment. Okay, there's other ways of creating alignments as well. So here, first of all, in the alignments pull down, there's obviously a bunch of different ways to create alignments. We're going to be talking about a few here, the alignment creation tools and the create from objects, as well as maybe a little bit about the offset and widenings. Okay. So first things first, if I want to make this an alignment, again, this is part of an X reference. I can actually extract out the data to create these two center lines as an alignment. So I'm going to go to the Alignments tab here, and then go to the Create Alignment from Objects. And you'll notice here that if I try to pick the objects, it's not going to let me because it's not the right type. Okay, but we do have the ability here to use the X reference option to grab stuff from an X reference. So that makes it a little easier. So I don't have to extract that out manually. So as I pick it, you notice that the thing gets selected. Now, if there's more objects inside of that X reference, like for example, this wasn't a polyline, it was just a bunch of segments, I can still do the same thing there and keep on selecting objects. Okay, so I'm done selecting objects, so I'll hit return. You'll notice there's a little arrow here on the direction. I'm going to go ahead and leave it that way. I want to go from south to north. So I'm going to hit return to accept that. And what's going to happen is I got to come up with a name and some other criteria here. I'm just going to call this one Main Street. Okay. No imagination, of course. So obviously alignment styles, etc. I'm going to change this to the alignment label set to just major, minor, and geometry points. I'm not going to worry about super elevations today, so I'm not really concerned with that. Okay, I'm also not going to add curves. I'm going to let the polyline dictate what's going to happen. Now, also with this ability, we do have the ability to add design criteria. And what this is designed to do is give you warnings if you go outside of limits as far as certain radii. Okay. For example, let's say that this is a 30-mile-an-hour street, and I'm going to go ahead and use a criteria-based design. Again, all this is going to do is tell me if I'm outside limits. And I'll give you an example here. So out of the box, the product comes with a few of these XML files. And just to show you if this is something that's useful to be inside of these roadway standards, if I right-click on any one of these, I'm going to go ahead and open it just to show you what's inside of it. Oh, it's on my other screen. Excuse me. Okay. So you can kind of see here for minimum radius and speeds here, it's going to give you some different criteria here. So you can kind of guess what's happening here as far as how it calculates the super elevations and whatnot. So the basic thing would be here for minimum radiuses. Okay. So if I use that, if I'm outside of this radius, it's just basically going to give me a warning. And this is completely optional. So if this is not something you would need to do for a particular road, you can always not check that. Okay. Also, you can kind of see here where I have the 4, 6, 10 max, the E max for the super elevation roads. I'm going to go to the 4% for the urban. Okay. I'm also going to start this at 1 plus 0, 0 in this case. I don't want to start at 0. Okay. So by doing this, it now should automatically label everything, and that's what this thing is doing right here. It's telling me I'm outside of my limits. It's just giving me a warning. Okay. So I can come into my my alignment properties and kind of see why it's doing that. If it's outside of the 30%, if I have a different design speed, let's say 50, that might not be a problem, depending on how it's done. Okay. So again, that's only the warning, so if it's outside of those limits, you can do that. Okay, for this example, I'm going to go ahead and turn that off. For now, I'm just going to change the warning symbol so I don't show it at all. So that's an option, so you have the design speed as well. So a couple of things that we're going to note here is once the alignment is in alignment, the goal here is not to ever delete it and do it again. You just want to change it. For example, if this is a different curve radius, you don't have to redraw things. You want to change the alignment. And the big reason for that is if these alignments are going to be tied to profiles and eventually a corridor, if you delete the alignment, everything subsequent from that will be a miss. So we definitely, the goal here is to just edit the alignment and not do it again. Okay. So again, it's all one entity, so if I move stuff around, everything should update. Okay. All right, so a couple things about labels. So I have the alignment. If I click on a particular label like this BP here, beginning point, I want you to notice here as I click on it, see how they all get selected? These are all the geometry points. So if I want to change one of these guys, I can, but keep in mind, if I click on them and then I hit delete, let's say, I delete them all. I don't want to do that. So if I just want to get rid of one label or things like that, the trick here is you got to use a control pick. So again, if I pick it, they all get selected. If I hold my control key down while I pick it, only the one thing gets selected. Okay, so I can hit control, and that way another option is I can delete that if I wanted to, just one label. Okay. Piece of cake. So control pick versus pick. Just want to make sure that that was understood. Okay. The other thing is I can always click on a label, and I have some options at the ribbon, like for example, flip the label. Hopefully you guys knew about that kind of thing. The reverse label will be more for direction, so that's not going to be very useful here. All right. So dealing with labels, I can always flip them around, and I can always pull them off. Okay. Just like almost every single other label, I can always bring it back as well. Piece of cake. So creating alignment from a polyline, fairly easy. Just got to change where you want it to start, and it automatically labels it. Okay. So another thing is, let's say I made a mistake, and instead of starting here, I want to start at the north side. So I want to go from top to bottom. Okay, so if I click on the alignment, all these things are modifiable, but you'll notice here it's kind of hidden in here in this modified tab here. Actually, I should say panel, sorry. This drop down, there's a reverse direction. So if I'm able to reverse the direction, gives me a warning, are you sure? And you see it flips it. So now the 1 plus 0, 0 is at the top. Okay, piece of cake. I didn't really want that to happen, so I'm going to go ahead and change it back, reverse direction. Now keep in mind, if I reverse direction and there's an alignment and profile assigned to that, that will also get reversed as well. So everything's linked. Okay. All right, so additionally, what I can also do, for some reason, I can change the labels of this entire alignment. If I click on this, I can go ahead and grab the alignment. I'm going to go, in this case, I'm going to right-click. And some of these things are also in the tab up here. But I'm going to go to this Edit Alignment Labels. And these are the different labels that are labeled throughout the entire alignment. So I can change what I'm actually labeling, etc. For example, I like the parallel tick, which is this 1 plus 0, 0 all the way through. But I don't want it every 100 feet. Let's say I want it every 200 feet. I can change the increment very simply. Okay. Or if I really wanted to, every 50 feet and apply. So I can label this however I want to. And what's nice about this is if you have a long alignment, a lot of times I'll have these humongous alignments for a river, let's say, and I only want to show mile markers, and I can change the increment pretty simply. Okay. Now what I can also do is change the actual alignment geometry points. Remember, if you remember, I deleted the BP there, the beginning point. I can also change what geometry points get labeled from this interface as well. So right now, these are the things being labeled, and let's say I don't want to label the beginning point. Okay. So you can see here, I can change that based on this as well. This would probably be a more appropriate way of doing that. You can set that up in your template where it's automatically set that way, so that way you don't have to do that next time. Okay. All right. Another feature, for some reason, let's say from the beginning half until this intersection, I want to label one way, but then after that intersection, I want to label another way. So for example, like right around 1950, I want it to switch. Okay. You also have this capability as well in the Edit Alignment Labels. I'm going to move this out a little bit here. See here where it says Start and End Station. I'm going to change these to only go to 1950. Okay. So by doing that, it's not labeling outside of that. But then if I wanted to, I can add to that, say, from 1950 and on, I want it to be a different label style, just for some reason. Okay. So I have this capability as well. Again, all I'm doing is clicking on it, right-clicking, and going to Edit Alignment Labels. So what I'm going to do this time for major stations, I'm going to be perpendicular with a line for some reason. And I'm going to hit Add. So this one, for major stations, this time for the start station, I'm going to go ahead and start it, say, 2000. And then go to the end. So it'll do this kind of thing. So I can change based on the station range what actually gets labeled. Pretty simple. So again, all I did at this point is I made an alignment from a polyline, and then I'm just labeling the thing. Piece of cake. All right. I would like to make one more alignment here, and then I'll show you another way to do that instead of drawing it from a polyline, how I can make it a little bit smarter, so to speak. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and make another alignment from an object. And again, I'm going to do X for X reference because this is from an X reference. Pick here. You see my arrow is going the wrong way. I want it to go from left to right in this case. So I'm going to hit R for reverse. And I'm going to call this something else. I'm going to call this one side street. Again, start at 1 plus 0, 0. Same thing. I'm not going to add any curves. I think we're good to go. This game is I'm not really too worried about this one because there's no curves in this anyway. Okay. All right. So now I have another alignment. So same thing. I just did a control pick to get rid of that. I could do the same thing I just showed you. Okay. So now we have an alignment here. Two alignments, I should say. So hopefully, when you have the alignments underneath the in the prospect underneath alignments, they should be sitting there. There's nothing underneath them, so there's no profiles or profile views for that matter. So nothing's happening there. So what we just did there is when we went to alignments, we did the create from objects. The next one we're going to do is we're going to use the alignment creation tools, and we'll show you an example of that. For example, I'm going to create an alignment over here, and I want to start at a specific station. Let's say I want to start at station 10 plus 75, right there. So I want to start there and go perpendicular from that, or what have you. So maybe for 100 feet off of that. All right. So I would like to show you how to actually access some of this data from transparent commands. So I'm going to go into right-click on the gray area so I can grab a toolbar, which happens to be one called Transparent Commands. And where did my toolbar go? Is it on my other screen? It is on my other screen. That's why I couldn't see it. I got to bring it over. Okay. So this Transparent Commands, the reason why they call it transparent is that you can do this inside of a command. There's all kinds of them, like for bearing and distance. The one that I'm really interested in, though, is the station and offset. Okay. So if I wanted to, just to show you, I don't have to be in a Civil 3D command. If I type in L for line, just a regular line, I'll say right there. And then I want to go to a specific station and offset, I can use this function. So again, inside of any command. So station offset, it says select alignment. I'll pick my alignment. It's going to say station. I'll say 1075. And I'm going to make it an offset of -40. Just making this up. So you'll see here, it grabbed that for me. So again, I can use this command as a transparent command in any single AutoCAD command or Civil 3D command. What we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and create an alignment off of this at 100 feet using this functionality. So I'm going to go ahead and dock that for now so I can have access to that. So this time I'm going to go to my alignment, and this time alignment creation tools. So this is basically creates an empty alignment, no geometry in it, and then I can place data inside of that. I'm going to call this one, let's see, offset. Okay, same thing, start at station 100. Geometry points, everything else still the same. Okay. All right, so in this case, it brings up a toolbar. So this is where we can come in and add lines, curves, spirals, etc. All right, this is called a constraint-based design, where I can actually link things together, make sure things are tangent, the right curves, that kind of thing, so I can edit the thing. All right. So again, I want to start at 1075 and go at 100 feet off of this perpendicular. Okay, so again, I'm at an empty alignment here, which is offset, nothing in it. I'm going to go ahead and go to the function that's a tangent to tangent with no curves. I don't want to put a curve in there yet. So specify start point. This is where I'm going to go ahead and use a station offset. Select this alignment. Yeah, I must have missed it. 1075, offset of 0. I want to be right on it. And notice it still says specify station, so I'm going to do 1075 again at an offset of -100. I'm going to hit escape one time to get out of my command, and notice it says next point now. So I'm just going to hit return to get out of that. So now I have an alignment start exactly at 1075 going this way. Okay. As an example, the reason why sometimes I use this is, let's say you're trying to meet something over here, and I'm just going to make this up. I'm going to go to tangent, tangent, no curves again, but I'm not going to start here. I'm going to come over to here. And this is what's kind of confusing. This is actually the same alignment. It's actually one entity, but you'll notice that this is not getting labeled over here. And the reason for that is that they're not connected. Once they get connected, then it will actually label. Okay. So I'm going to do a couple of things here. I want to do a curve, another line, and then a curve here. So line, curve, line. I'll show you kind of how this works. So I'm going to do a curve off the end of this guy. So here's the different ways that you can draw curves with the Civil 3D alignment object. There's 3 sections. I guess there's 4 that best fit with around points, which I don't have. There's a fixed section, a floating section, and a free. I guess in my opinion, the fixed and the free, the names should be switched, because what the fixed means is if I put a fixed curve in there, it's going to stay wherever I put it. And if I move the other objects outside of that alignment, they don't move with it. So it's not really attached. It's affixed to where I put it. The free is actually, that's why I think it should be fixed, but the free means it's actually going to be free to go between the 2 objects, and if the other 2 objects move, so does that. So it's kind of linked together. The floating would be one object that's attached to one object, and the other side is floating. So if I'm going to do a curve off the end of this, that would be a floating curve. So I have a few different options for that. I'm going to use a simple one here where if from the end of entity with a radius and a length, I'm going to use that option. Select entity to attach to. I'm going to pick this one here. It's going to ask me which direction I want the curve to go. It's going to be clockwise. I'm making this up. Radius of 200 sounds good. And then the second thing that I have to specify for the curve is either length, a delta. You can kind of see that at the command line. I'm just going to put a length of 125. Hit return to finish, and you see now it's getting labeled. So again, if it's attached to where it begins, that's where the labels go. This is still not being labeled. So then I want to put a 100-foot tangent here, and then I'm going to put a curve between these 2 objects. Okay. But the reason why this is attached, right, if I come over to here and I move this around, you'll notice here that that's now linked. Wherever that goes, that curve will be tangent from that point. Okay. So this is called the constraint-based design. So same thing, if I grab the curve, it's automatically always going to be tangent. So I can edit it that way if need be. All right, so this time I'm going to do a line section. There's a fixed line and a floating. I want it to be a floating because one's attached. Floating line from the end of curve with a length. Pick the end of this guy. It's going to specify length. I'm going to put in 100. Okay. So I'm creating a bunch of constraints is really what's happening here. As I move this stuff around, notice everything's going to be tangent, no matter where I go with it. Okay. Same thing here, hopefully. If I move this guy, it's all attached. So you can take advantage of these attachments or constraints to let you actually build this. Okay, and then finally, I'm going to go ahead and put a curve in between here. I want to be a radius of 300 between this line and this line. Everybody knows the radius or the fillet command. That's somewhat similar here. I'm going to go to the curve section here and do a free curve fillet between 2 entities with a radius. It says first entity I'm going to pick here. Second entity I'm going to pick here. Is my solution greater than or less than 180? It's going to be less than. I'm not doing a clover leaf here. It's going to be less than 180. and I set a radius of 300. Notice now it's going to get labeled. So that's how you can kind of tell visually if you're trying to connect things. All right, you can use that functionality to make sure that you know that they're connected. What's a little different here that you do not see when you do it from an alignment, you don't see those extra extensions. I don't know if you see that, there's a little dashed line here. So that line, since it was part of the entity, if I move that line around, it's actually part of that. And it will limit me to be constrained geometrically to be filleted a 300-foot radius between those. So a lot of functionality in order to get the alignments either by the alignment creation tools or from objects. I would say 90% of the time I'm probably drawing a polyline and converting it, but there are times that this definitely can be useful. Okay. Other things to edit from this, like a lot of the times you won't be in there. If I need to edit that again, I just got to click on the alignment, and there should be a geometry editor. I can also right-click and go to the geometry editor here, which basically brings up that toolbar again. Okay. So now to show you a couple of other things here. If I need to edit this in any way, the geometry, I can use grips, delete an object, do it again. But there's this little nice functionality here where I have a spreadsheet editor, so to speak, where it tells me how I did this and how they're constrained. Whether I use floating free or whatever. And I can actually unlock that so it won't be locked together. I don't want to do that, but you can see over here I have the options for which radius I used. Let's say instead of 200, I want to use 150. You see here it's modifying automatically. Okay, and everything's linked together. All right, so I'll change that back to 100 feet between them. All right, looks like that one's constrained. There's not enough room between those, so it's not going to let me do that. Okay. So obviously, since they're very constrained, it could possibly be a problem, but you're over-constraining. So that's kind of what's happening. If I want to get exact information from this, if I have a long alignment, another way would be this button right here, which is to pick a sub-entity in the alignment. So if I pick a curve, it'll give me the information for just that instead of looking at the spreadsheet. Okay. So I can change the information that way as well. That's kind of nice if I have a really, really long alignment. That way I don't have to go find it in that big old list. Okay. All right. So again, we kind of went over the alignments, whether it be from an object or from the creation. Okay. Keep in mind, even though I created this one by a polyline, I can still use those tools. Like, for example, let's say right over here, I'm going to go ahead and edit geometry, and I'm going to add some PIs in here. So if I wanted to do this, something like that, I can edit the alignment just as I would before and add curves, etc. Right? So again, most of the time I'm creating it by polyline and then editing it afterward, but I'm going to go ahead and undo that to get my edits back. All right. A couple of other things that you have an option to do as well are a widening and an offset alignment. And the reason why this can be somewhat useful is that these are going to be linked to the parent alignment, so they'll move with it. For example, if I go to create an offset here, and I'm going to create an offset of this one, like maybe I want it for the edge of pavement or whatever have you. Okay, it's going to create an offset, come up with some name, my good old whatever. Okay. Don't want to go to the end. How many offsets to the left? So I'm going to only do the left only. So I'm going to put 0, and let's say I want to put 15 there. Now the reason why this can be useful, you can use these. If this is the offset alignment you want to use, then it's going to move with the alignment. So I'll give you an example here. You can see I don't have to do the whole length. So I'm going to hit OK. So what happens is if I move this in any way, notice the offset moves with it. So you're creating two alignments that are linked. And this can be useful for later if need be for a corridor of some kind. That can be useful. All right. Or the same thing if I'm doing some kind of a bus turnout. I'm going to do that over here just because I'm not going to use this later. This is the same kind of functionality where you can create a widening. And it's going to select the alignment off of this one. And I want the widening to start here and end there. I'm just eyeballing it by picking. Enter widening offset. 25 is fine. And the side will be to the right. Of course, no solution available because I didn't give enough room. So let's try that one more time. Create widening. So I will start here all the way to here. Widening, I'll just do 15 this time, and to the right. And of course, the solution is not available. That's what I get for just winging it, don't I? Start station, end station, 25 left. Okay. That's what I was expecting to see, so I was going to jump that out. So here's the offset alignment. And you can see the properties of that offset alignment where I can change, instead of having a line, curve, line, I can do a curve, reverse curve kind of a thing. You can see that in there. And I can change the parameters that way. Okay. So maybe the length, I only want it to be 150 feet. So you can see here, the reason why I'm showing it this way is I have a widening. So I would have to have an alignment from the edge of pavement, and then I would create a widening alignment for that. The reason why that can be useful is I can use that again in a corridor. But then, of course, if I move my alignment in any way, you'll see it goes with it. Obviously, I'm getting some weird results when I get way over here. But so that's what the alignments for the offset and the widening are for. So you can take advantage of those when you go into the corridor side. Okay. I'm going to delete these just so I keep the drawing a little cleaner. All right. Should be saving often. All right. So alignments, just the two-dimensional or the 2D horizontal alignment, the layout of the line. A couple of other things that I do like to see as well. I was going to do that with profiles, but I'm going to go do this as well. Let's say this side street alignment right here. A lot of times in a profile view, I need to extend this out. Okay. By extending that, so I can see what's happening on the existing ground beyond this. Okay. Problem is, I don't want there to be a line there. I don't want it to plot. So I'm going to show you a little trick here that you can do in, I think it was in 2012 when they came out. It's one of those, 2011 or 2012. But I'm going to go ahead and draw this thing 100 feet out. And I'll show you what I'm talking about. Oops. I'm just taking a regular AutoCAD line, offsetting it 100 feet. So I want to extend this out 100 feet so I can see what's happening over here. But then I don't want that to be displayed. So there's a couple things that you can do. I'm going to grab this one, and I'm going to go perpendicular. I'm just grabbing that and moving it over. So I've extended that 100 feet. However, my stationing doesn't start at 100 anymore. So I have a couple of choices that I can do here. I'm going to go ahead and go into the alignment properties. So I'll click on it, either right-click or go up to alignment properties. And I have an opportunity here for station control. Instead of starting at 1 plus 0, 0, I can say start at 0. It says, are you sure? Yes, I am sure. So now it does that. Okay. Well, if this wasn't exactly 100 feet, what if it was, 93.2 or something like that, or some weird one? I can actually change it another way as well. Okay. And this is 6 to half dozen as the other, I guess. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to where I was, show you another way to do that. I want this to still start at 1 plus 0, 0, but I want the reference point to be a different spot. So instead of just changing it to 0, I can click on this and go to an intersection. So I'm going to pick the reference point. Are you sure? Yes. And then I'm going to use an intersection snap to go right at that intersection. Make sure I get it right. So I'm going to pick there. So now 1 plus 0, 0 is going to be starting at a different reference point. Okay. It's kind of a weird thing that happens. Sometimes it goes to -0, which is obviously impossible, but that's the way it goes. But then I want to show you how I can hide this. So I'm still starting here. I'm going to go ahead and go back to the alignment properties again. And you'll see that there is a masking section. So I can mask this first 100 feet. So I'm going to add a masking region. It says, where do you want to start? I'm going to snap the end point of that. Second point, I'm going to go to the intersection over here and pick that. So it's going to basically hide what's there. So if I go and hit OK here, you'll see it disappears. Now it's still there, but it's just not going to hide. It's going to hide it. That way I can use it in the profile and the profile view, but I don't want to display it when I plot it here. There is kind of a caveat. You'll see that, I don't know if you noticed that the station 1 plus 0, 0 has now been removed. So what I have to do is actually kind of trick it. So I'm going to go into the alignment properties. Instead of going to station 0 to 100, I'm going to go to 99.99. Now, actually, if you go in close enough, there is actually an extra 100th in there. But for plotting, I mean, nobody's going to notice that, and it's just for hiding it anyway. So this way you can have, an extended alignment but not have to show it. So we got the widenings, the alignment, the offsets, the creation tools from objects. Okay, good stuff. And then we got the masking. All right. Oops, I guess I have to Windows Update here, huh? All right, so next thing is we're going to do is take this alignments and we're going to make profiles with them. Okay. The other thing that you might notice here is underneath it, sometimes you see a little triangle. Anytime you see that, that means there's data underneath it. And the reason why there was data here, there's no longer is because I had that offset alignment. So the reason why I say that is anytime you go into the alignments and you see these little triangles, that means there's something underneath it, either be a profile or a profile view. So it's kind of a quick check to see what's under it. So I'm going to go ahead and create a couple of profiles here. Show you kind of the procedure here. All right, so in the profile section now, so I can do the vertical aspect. In the profile section, we got the surface profile or the profile creation tools. These are the two that you'll probably use the most. Surface profile, you get the existing, and then the proposed for the profile creation tools. Very similar to the alignment. So I'm going to go to the create surface profile, and in the main street here, I'm going to sample off the existing ground surface, which is the EG here. So I have the opportunity here, the main street, all I'm going to do is highlight EG and hit add. It's now been sampled. At the same time, if I wanted an offset, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to hit the sample offsets. And for some reason, I want to see what's happening 25 feet to the right of my center line. Hit add, and I can actually add multiple at the same time. I'm going to also add a profile view. So the profiles doesn't display anything until I add a profile view to house that information. I'm going to use a display or a full grid view style, but you can kind of see what alignment. If I keep on kind of running through next here, station range, heights, we'll get to that in a minute. Which profiles you want to display, data bands, which we'll get to also, and even hatch options if you wanted to hatch between two different profiles for like existing and proposed. Hit create profile view. I'm going to stick it right there. There's my profile. You might notice there's actually two in there, one for the right and one for the center line. The way that you know is if I just hover over one of these, it'll tell me which one it is. Of course, if I just list it. So I click on it, you see up here surface 1. This one over here is the right 25. Okay. All right, I'm going to click on that profile view and go to the profile view properties. All those things that you saw before are now in tabs, and I can change anything I want. And I'm going to go ahead and change, and I'm not going to draw in the existing ground on the right side. So I'm going to hide it. So now all we got is just center line. Okay, I'm going to go do the same thing for the side street here. So profile, create surface profile. This time I'm going to go to the side street, grab the existing ground, hit draw. I'm not really changing anything, so I'm going kind of quick here. Create profile view, and stick it right there. Okay. A lot of times I have to send these grids to the back so I can see the red on top of that. It's just kind of a draw order issue. And there's the side street existing ground profile. All right, so that's the existing ground. Now it goes to the proposed ground. So again, we're going to want to obviously have this design somehow and then this design somehow, but we should want to meet those together there. And we'll show you some automatic techniques for that as a matter of fact. So the procedure now, I want to go ahead and design a proposed one. So we went to the profile, create surface profile. The other one is the profile creation tools. So create a finish ground. Another way that it can be done is if I click on it, there's a profile creation tool there. So I have two choices, right? I'll do the first one here. Profile creation tools. It's going to ask me for which profile view to pick, which will be this one. And I'm going to call this one main FG, main finish ground. Labels are fine. So what you might see, there's a toolbar. This is kind of very similar to the alignment layout tools, very similar. In the interest of time, I'm going to design very quickly by just drawing tangents. I'm going to start at the beginning, and I'm going to make a skateboard park here. Looks good, right? That's good stuff right there. So a couple of things. You should notice that they automatically got labeled, but there's also some nice things as well. If I need to add another one here, very simply, I'm going to add another PVI. I want it to be right there, so I can very quickly change that. No, I don't want that. Click it, delete it. Okay, add it again, right? So if I click on any one PVI, point of vertical intersection, I'm going to click on the line and notice that there's 3 grips. So I got an option to, I can move this around and get everything labels, but I can also have these grips to hold the grade. So a lot of times I need to kind of move this over, but I need to hold the grade. It's a great option to be able to do that. Okay. Nice little trick as well. If I want to go to a specific station and elevation, I have 2 choices. For example, this is at station 574.67. I want to make it 575, even station. So I'm going to go to my little grid view, very similar to what we did with the alignments. And I'm going to just double click in here and make it 575. Okay, and I can change anything in here. If I want it to be a grade of a different grade, just 2%, you can see it's modifying as I go. Okay. All right, the other choice, a lot of times you might want to do this graphically. Here's the trick. I'm going to turn on the DYN here at the bottom, dynamic input. I'm not a big fan of that, but this is a nice feature, so sometimes I will turn it on. If I click on my profile, notice here if I'm just hovering over a grip, it actually gives me an echo of what that station and elevation is. All right. The reason why that can be useful, for example, I want to go to a specific elevation. So right now it's at station 5 plus 75, but the elevation is 18.74. I want to make it an even 20. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and click on that, and with the DYN on, I now have the opportunity, by using the tab key, to tab between the station and elevation and type it in that way. So if I go to make sure that my elevation is current, I'm going to type in 20. It'll make it an even 20. So again, that only works with the DYN. If that's not on, if I uncheck that, you'll notice here I don't have that option. So that can be useful. All right. Very good design. So the other thing is I'm going to put in some vertical curves just to show you, because obviously that'd be kind of a tough drive. Very similar to what we did with alignments. I'm going to go and make the easy one. We're not having any floating because there's all the lines are in there. So I'm going to go to more free vertical curves and use the vertical parabola, which is probably the most common. Pick on this and have an option for either a pass-through point, a K value, or a length. I'm going to do it by length. I'm going to make that one 200. I'm going to do this one. I'm just going to put a bunch in here. 200, 200, 300. Ooh, getting fancy now. All right. So as I do that, you'll see that these things get labeled. Based on your label style, these things get attached to the top. But I can click on them, move them down. Fancy stuff. Okay. Cool. All right, so same kind of thing. I'm going to do the exact same thing over here, but I'm going to purposely make sure that I don't actually link to the 2 elevations to be the same. Okay? And I'll show you later on how to change that. So I'm going to close this down. And then, you know what? I did forget one thing. It's a 4-step process what I usually do. So you have to create an alignment. Then you have to create an existing ground profile. Then you have to create a finished grade profile. Those are the 3 things we've done so far. The 4th thing we got to do is this at the bottom. If you guys use these bands, what you might notice here is the elevations for each one of these are suspiciously familiar. And the reason for that is the finished grade profile did not exist when we did this. So both these numbers are referencing the same profile, which is the existing ground. So hopefully, I mean, if I go right in here, obviously the existing ground and the proposed ground are not the same here. So those numbers should be different. And here's the 4th thing we got to do. We got to go and change that. So I'm going to click on the profile view and go to the profile view properties. And in the bands tab, because that's what we're talking about, the bands at the bottom, if I kind of show you here, if I click on that guy, you notice here I go to the right. It's referencing 2 different profiles, or it can reference 2 profiles. This is referencing the same. We need to change so profile 2 is referencing the finished grade, not the existing grade. Once we've done that, now they're linked properly and the numbers will update. Okay? So that's kind of the 4th thing. If you're going to use these bands to plot, you want to make sure that they're obviously referencing the right elevation. And it's about styles as far as, you know, precision, things like that. So there's your 4 steps, right? This one, we've already created alignment, and the existing ground profile, we need to create a finished grade profile and then change those numbers as well. So I'm going to do it quickly. I'm going to go to Profile Creation Tools, call this one Side FG, and create tangents. Again, just manually putting these in. Not even worrying about what the where it's supposed to meet. Okay. Now what you might have noticed here, maybe somebody picked up on it, but you can notice here that I'm starting at station 100, right? And I designed all the way to here. So I made a mistake here. Oops. All right. There's nothing here. I just want to see what the existing ground was doing. That was that masking. So that was that thing again over here. Let me move over. So I'm really designing from 100 on, but this is a mask, so I don't want to. But easy enough. I'm going to click on this guy, turn on my DYN, another option, hover over this one, tab to make sure my station's right, and put in 100. Okay. All right. Now the reason why I did this, you might notice that there was a label here that's being hidden now. This is kind of an obscure one, so I want to make sure everybody knew how to do this. I want to show that, and there's a staggering kind of a thing. So I'm going to click on this, and I'm going to go to the profile label. Sorry, profile labels. So I'm going to click on it, right click, and I'm going to go to Edit Labels. So by default, the grade breaks is what we're labeling, those guys right there. You'll see as I kind of move to the right here, let me extend this out, there is a weeding. So if there's, the reason why the weeding is there is so if there's a lot of PVIs in there, they don't want to label each one. So it's only a label if it's outside of the 100-foot weeding. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is change that to 0. So it's going to label everything. And so the label will come back. And that's because that was within 100 feet. All right, I'm going to move this over here just to be different. We wouldn't have had that problem if this is the case because they're outside of 100 feet now. All right, I can do profile grades, etc., or vertical curves, I could do that also. And the last thing is to go to my profile view properties and change my profile 2 to the side FG so the numbers are right. So you can see here a lot of setup to get the alignments, the profiles, and the design done here. Okay. Turn off my DYN, good old Q save. All right, so a couple things I'm going to show you here before we get on to the assemblies is this intersection here. I want those two verticals to meet. Okay. A couple ways we can do this. I can label that. I can list it. We're going to show you a couple of extra labels in case some people didn't know. And also a listing capability. So if I want to list, I want to figure out, so at station, whatever station that is, what, 19 plus 7, 1970 or something, I'm guessing. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to label this alignment. I'm going to grab this thing, grab the alignment, and go up to Add Labels, and there's a bunch of different ways I can do this. I'm going to do a station offset fixed point, and I'm going to select the endpoint of that to label. Now that could be the worst label I've ever seen, but that's out of the box. Of course, I can change that, but I really wanted to get what station it was. Once I have that, again, if I copy this around, you'll notice updating. So it's a nice little feature if I want to label the curb returns or whatever I want to label station offset. Now you just get it copied around. Okay, that's really bugging me, so I got to change the style. Okay, much better. Okay, I feel better. All right, so now that I have the station, I can now get the elevation of the profile. So there's many different ways I can do this. But I'm going to go to the Analyze tab, and you'll see that there's an inquiry tool here. So I'm going to go to that one. And in the inquiry tool, what am I trying to actually list here? Yeah, alignment, a profile, etc. I really want the profile elevation there. But you'll notice here under the profile, it's asking for a profile station elevation at a point or an elevation difference. So I want profile station elevation at a point. And it's going to ask me for which profile I want to list from, which is the main FG. I want the main FG, and then I'm going to change the side FG to match that. So here's my main FG. And so then it says pick a point. And notice here it says pick a point is outside my profile range. So really what it wants me to do is come over here to the profile view and pick. Now I don't want to do that. So here's the trick that I use. I'm going to, off an alignment, there's a way that I can actually do a station offset alignment and a profile elevation. Again, this is just lifting. So I'm going to use the Main Street and the Main Street finish grade. And so you'll see here, wherever I pick, I'm not going to snap anything, wherever I pick, it's telling me the information here. So that will give me exact, if I snap to the endpoint of that, that will give me the profile elevation of 36.27. So that's the one that I want, 36.27. Okay. See if I can remember that. So I'm going to come back over to this one, grab here, geometry editor, pick on that, 36.27. Ooh, that is brutal. Okay. All right. So then you can kind of see how I can go get the information. Now I don't have a label style set up where I can actually label that also, because out of the box it doesn't have one. You guys might have a station offset, but plus an elevation if need be. All right. Pretty cool so far. So now that I have the horizontal and the vertical defined, I can now start talking about creating assemblies, the cross sections, and then also how do I create the corridor. Now we have, looks like about 15 minutes left, so obviously we'll run out of time for all of this, but we're going to start moving on to assemblies now. I want to design a road, curb gutter, sidewalk it looks like, and also how do we deal with widenings and intersections and cul-de-sacs. Okay. Not that a whole lot, although I have seen lately that there are starting to get some subdivisions built again. I guess the economy is starting to come back, so that is starting. So we're going to create, for now, a simple assembly through here. And I think I do have a layer, so bear with me one second here. Let me turn on the notes I think I put on. Yeah. So you can see here I have, for this road, it's a 20-foot lane with a 5-foot sidewalk and a 2.5-foot curb. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and make an assembly, which is like a typical cross-section. So under the assembly, I'm going to create assembly, and I'm going to call this one Sim Road for symmetrical road. It doesn't have to be any specific name. The assembly style, all codes, is fine for now. We'll explain some of this as we go. So you notice it asked me for a assembly baseline location. In order to create a corridor, so we can get cross sections and get volumes and surfaces and things like that for this road, we have to have three things: an alignment, a profile, and an assembly. So the assembly, this guy right here, needs to be able to be displayed, and that vertical line right there is the baseline. The baseline would be synonymous with the alignment. So that's going to follow the alignment horizontally. That circle is going to follow the profile or our finish grade vertically. So it knows where to follow that. So what we're going to do is, off of this, is we got to create the structure. And that's done with tool palettes. All right, so these are the tool palettes that come with the product. And you'll see that there's some default assemblies. There's also some basic, some lanes, etc. In the interest of time, we're going to go ahead and pick some of these for you guys. So I'm going to create the lanes 20 feet on either side. So I'm going to create the lane outside the lane super elevation. And I'll explain while I'm using this because it has layers. So the side is going to be the right side. I'm going to make this a width of 20. That's what it was before. So the slope will be negative 2%, which is right. Let's say that this road is a 4 inches of AC over 8 inches of AB. Just making that up. So the pavement 1 depth is 4 inches, so I'm going to put in 4/12. The pavement 2, I'm going to put it 0 because it allows 4 layers. I'm only going to use 2 layers. The base is 8 inches, so 8/12. And it's the base of 0. Okay. Again, this is on the right side. So watch what happens here. It says select marker point within assembly. So I'm going to pick this one right here, and boom, I now have my road. If I wanted to, I can immediately go to the left side and do that. I'm not going to. I'm going to do the entire right side because I'm going to show you how to just move it over. It's very simple. Or I should say mirror it over. Okay. So there's that. Next thing I'm going to do is I have to get a curb and a sidewalk and then a daylight. So we'll show you a few choices here. So underneath the curbs, you'll see there's a bunch of different curves. curbs, I should say. And if I go to the Urban Curb Gutter General, I'm going to do a little funny something here. I'm going to go to right-click on it and go to Help. This is actually helpful. Come on. The reason why I'm pointing this out is it's going to ask you for these numbers, and it's nice to know what they're asking you for. All right, A, B, C, etc. Everyone's a little bit different, but you can always go to the help to figure out what they're talking about. Every single one of these. Okay. All right, so I'm going to go to the Urban Curb Gutter General, and I'm going to change some manual things because I happen to know. I'm not going to make that an extension. I'm going to make it the same depth, and that's good enough for now. Might be a little off, but we'll see. I'm trying to remember. Yeah, it's supposed to be 22. So now I'm going to come and click on this circle here, and there's my curb, also with the sub base as well. Okay. A couple things that you might notice over here. I'm going to look at the prospector for a minute. Underneath the prospector, there's the assembly. There's that sim road, and underneath sim road, there's a particular baseline, and there is the right side, and there is my subassemblies that I used. And you can see in the name, doesn't look too good. So I'm going to go ahead and call this one AC and AB. That makes more sense. And this one I'm going to go ahead and call this one different as well. C and G, curb and gutter. That'll come back into play later when we're using a corridor. It's very important to name those. I'm going to go ahead and use an urban sidewalk, and I'm not going to change anything. Put it right there. Hit return, and of course the worst name in history. Change it to sidewalk. Okay, last but not least, I'm going to go ahead and create a daylight here. I have two choices. There's a bunch of different daylights that I have here, and there is also a generic, which allows me to just link slope to surface if I wanted to. If I just want to say, hey, go to 2:1, and that's where it's going to be. That would be that option. But if I have like a right-of-way, I need to change the slopes here and there, then I have to start going into daylight. So we're going to use this one here to do a daylight max width. And because of that, I want to have a different number for cut and fill. For some reason, for cut, I want 2:1, but for fill, I want 4:1. And the max width, I'm going to put it 50 feet. What that does is if a 2:1 or a 4:1 goes outside of 50 feet, it'll cut it back so these slopes can become variable. Okay? And then I will pick that one. Hit return to get out of the command. So you can see there's my section, at least the right side of it. I guess I have to rename this one. Call this one daylight. Okay. And then on the daylight, what I'm going to do here, not just daylight, I want to move this over to the left side to basically mirror it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab these guys. These are sub-assemblies, and notice what happens to the ribbon. I can mirror it, move it, or copy it. Basically, if I needed these pieces in another assembly, I could do that. But I'm going to mirror. So I'm going to mirror that. It says select marker point. I'm going to mirror it around the center line. So I'm going to pick that. And now I have two sides. And notice what it did here. It automatically played to the left side, so naming these was simple. You're allowed to have duplicate names as long as they're on different sides. Okay. So now I have a road. And since we have about 5 minutes left, we're going to go ahead and create a quick corridor just around the main street. We won't have a lot of time to deal with widenings and intersections. That will be for next time. But we will show you how to do all of that. All right. One last thing I would like to show before I do that is in the tool palettes. If you use these assemblies and you want to use them again, these assemblies must be in the drawing in order to use them for a corridor. So I would have to copy that to another drawing. What I'm going to show you here is you can actually customize your own tool palettes to use some of the assemblies that you would want to use. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right-click on this tool palette here. I'm going to make a new one called My Stuff. I'm going to right-click and move that to the top. So it's going to show up here. Again, I would suggest not messing with any of the ones that are there. So I'm going to grab this to show you. I'm going to click on this line here, which is the assembly line. I don't want to pick on the sub-assemblies. And here's the trick. I got to click on it. I don't hot grip it. I got to click on the line again, click and hold, and you'll see I get a new grip, and I can actually drag that into my tool palette. And now I have my sim road in here. So if I go to some other drawing, just to show you, I go to new blank drawing, nothing in it. And so I want to use that. All I got to do is click on it, put it in there, and now I can use it. And now it's part of it. Okay, so you can use it as a nice tool if you use the same assemblies over and over and over again. That's how you could copy it between drawings. Okay. All right, final thing, and then we'll leave it at that. So I'm going to create a corridor through here. There's going to be I want to have a gap in here because obviously I need something else. Maybe even a gap here. Show you some of those features, and of course, how do we deal with this stuff? Okay. So I'm going to go to this corridor. I'm going to click on corridor, and I'm going to call this one roads for lack of imagination. And you'll see here which alignment am I following. I'm going to use Main Street. And I wanted to use the profile of the main FG. That's what I wanted to follow. And the assembly I'm going to use is a sim road. So those are your three things you need in order to create a corridor. I'm going to uncheck that and say automatically daylight to my EG surface. So everything's done to begin with, and we'll go from there. All right, I'll hit OK. And then you'll see it automatically creates a corridor. Obviously, I have some daylighting things going on because I made a skateboard park. And there we go. Let me save the drawing. So I guess in essence, I'm going to go to the object viewer here to kind of show you what it does. Let me just go to 3D wireframe here, make it a little faster. So you can kind of tell what's happening, right? Here's each one of the sections is just connecting it with strings or 3D polylines or feature lines, if you want to call it, to create that structure. Okay. So obviously, if you want it to be exact, you need more feature line or more frequency in there. There's a lot that we can do. Okay. So what we're going to do is save this for next time, but show you a couple of quick things. I don't want this to go to the end, so you can see here I can click on these. Just using the grips, I can change where it starts and stops. Okay. And then I'm going to show you how to create a gap here, and then we'll call it good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the corridor here, and there's two pieces of terminology you need to know. One is baseline, and the second is region. A corridor can be made up of many of these things. So a baseline is the alignment, and a region is a station range. So in order to create a gap here, I need to create two regions. One region is for the beginning, one region for the end. Okay. But the way that I'm going to do it here is I'm going to click on this, and I'm going to do this split region. Split into two regions. So I'm going to pick this guy. It's going to ask me to select the region to split, which is this one. Just going to pick it. And it says, where do I want to split? Now, if I wanted to be exact, I could. I'm just going to eyeball it, and you'll see why in a minute. I'll pick here. And now I have two regions. You can even see, right, there's none of the grip in here. So what I'm going to do here is click on this, come in these little two grips, and make them, I'm just going to eyeball it to create the gap. So now I have room to put in something else for that intersection. Okay. What it looks like externally, or sorry, in the spreadsheet editor, I should say, if I click on that corridor and go to corridor properties, and in the parameters, this is kind of what's happening. There is my baseline, and these are my regions. You can kind of see that. See how it's highlighting them as I click them? So it tells you which one it's looking at. All right. And so if I really wanted to, I would probably name these. And that's good for the next person who comes in so they know what the heck is going on. And you can change the frequency and all kinds of stuff for each one. But we'll get more into that as we move on to the next one. So again, to kind of recap, alignments and profiles. Alignments and profiles and assemblies to create the corridor. You need those three things. So in the alignment, it's the horizontal. We have a few choices on creating alignments, whether it be from the creation tools or from an object. Once you have the alignment, of course, you need a surface in order to create an existing ground profile. We created the finished grade profile to know where the thing's moving to. And then we created the corridor from that, so it knows where to follow. So it's basically that red line is following the baseline, which is the alignment. That circle is following the profile that we made. Okay. So in a nutshell, we now have a street here were for that corridor. Next time we will continue on, show you how to add to the same corridor this street and even an intersection, a cul-de-sac, and show you how to do some widening, etc. So hopefully that was informative for you. I am recording this, so I will give that link. Someone needs to see this again. I did not get any questions, so either I'm doing something well or you're eating too much, one of the two. But hopefully